Okay. Okay, I guess you can go ahead.
Now then, this postcard is taken of old Joseph Standing Bear and his wife. Joe Dixon standing between them. And it says on there, it says the capitation of it says, "Me, Joseph, and Lucy opened the Flathead Reservation." And he never knew what he was doing to the tribe, but of course he was getting a big, and he went out of the world with a big reputation. And but it was, all of this is done through big moneyed people getting on the good side of your senators and representatives. And then they promote these deals and get them through. And that's why the tribe is having so much trouble now. We had so many jurisdictions that we had through our treaty rights laid dormant for years. Now they're just surfacing, and the people are mad and bewildered about it, but it's true. These fellers that keep complaining about what the tribe does, they should never blame the tribe. They should blame the senators and representatives. That's what was handed to the tribe. And just like somebody said here a few years back, Reagan made the statement, what they give to the Indians. They never give any land to the Indians. The Indians owned that before they come. And they took it away from us. Like they're taking the Bitterroot Valley, the Nez Perces, they took the northeast corner of Oregon, the Snake River. They took that away from Chief Joseph's father. They done that in the Black Hills with the Sioux. Over here, the Sweetgrass country, Charlie McDonald showed me a book the other day, and the old chief that was with that part of them that told how he relinquished all the sweetgrass holdings to the government because they were to take care of his tribe with provisions. And that was right about the time that there was quite a starvation among the Blackfeet people. And then over on the west side of the Blackfeet was when the miners had a big pull with the senator, I guess, and that's when they got in on that part of Glacier Park because they figured it was a big mining deal, which it fell through and then become a park. And but that's the way everything's set, as I remember.
Is there any stories that you'd like to tell us about when people were forced to leave the Bitterroot?
Well, I don't know too much about that outside of my grandfolks, Joe Dishaw. My grandmother, Dishaw, was a close relative to Charlo. I don't know if their mothers were sisters or what, but she always claimed real close relation to Charlotte. Well, they moved out of the Bitterroot in the early 80s. They moved up here at Post Creek. All of her brothers and sisters was born up in that Stevensville country, but one, Marion Dishon, he was buried down here in Post Creek. And I think she said the Claremos and the Dishons, I believe some of the DeMontiers, and some of the Carl family, a few of them all moved out about the same time. Well, Charlo, he always resented that treaty thing. He said he never signed it. It was a forge. So he never left there till 91 and settled down there. But Arlie was the first one to move. And the story goes that Arlie wasn't a full Salish. He was part Nez first. But he was the guy that helped get it through. Well, then it seemed like they were to look the Jocko Valley over in this country, and if it suited them, everything was all right, fine. If they didn't, they'd be part of the Bitterroot left to them, but that was never done. So then they settled in here, the Salish, with pond rays. And then from the lower Flathead Lake, clear up Kalispell and Summers, Whitefish, Eureka, Tobacco Plains country, that was all Kootenai country. That's why I said it was kind of quite a coincidence. They're having this meeting, affiliated tribes, and they're having it on a part of an old Kootenai stomping ground. And I don't know if any of them will bring that up there. Because the Grevels and this old Two Feathers was a putting your world champion wrestler. And their home was where Summers is now. And my wife's mother stayed with her dad. I think she was 12 or 13 years old. And she lived with his old Sophie at Tobacco Plains up there out of Eureka. They would come from there to Mayersville and Ashley with their pack horses. Because their mother, after they were down on the ranch there, if there was a chicken hawk or anything around there, why, she was a pretty good shot. And she said that's how she learned, was with this old lady Sophie. I think this old Sophie was a sister to the old Morgio family. They have a big monument up there. I think there's a place there they call Sophie's Lake, too.
You were, part of the reason we got into this was you were talking about the opening of the reservation, and before the lands were allotted, there was that whole process of enrollment of Indians by the agent, and I was wondering if you knew anything about that, or...
No, the only thing I guess I really knew about it was when they were all coming down here to the old church. They was using that for a meeting then, after the new one was built. We got a picture, I think it's up at the commodity room. And that's when they were enrolling them. And, but that's about the only thing I know about the enrollment. They did say at one time that we were supposed to got 320 acres. Then they cut it down. And if you had real arid land, they give you 160 acres. If you had good productive land, they only give you 80. So I never knew much about it, but this picture we have up of that, it shows the clerks, and the feller was doing enrolling, and interpreters. My uncle Ed Dishaw and my dad was both interpreters for that. And I believe at that time there was some of them adopted into the tribe. I know they were. And there was some of them that was married white women. They adopted the white women in, and they were given allotments. My uncle Ed Dishaw was married to a woman by the name of Enfield. She was adopted at that time, and she had an 80 up there close to where Walter is. I think the old Couture family, I think Jess's grandmother was, I believe it was his grandmother or his mother, was a white woman, and she was adopted in, and she had a place at Arlee. Twin DeMars at Hot Springs, his wife was adopted, and she had an 80 there, 160 there rather. And Maud Larvey, she was adopted, and she had a place up there at Dayton. So there was a few of them. But there was an argument come up when they started to give out per capita payments. They wouldn't give them to them women. So I don't know if they ever took it to court or what, but anyhow it died out.
How would a person be adopted? What would you have to go through?
Well, you have to have sponsors like the chiefs or different ones that get out and tell you who he was. Now, this uncle of mine that had that Nerada country, Angus, I never knew here till about a year ago. I was looking at the records. I know he was a half-brother to my dad, and his mother was an Okanagan woman from the Colville. So I was looking at these records, and it showed the different people in there and degree of blood, and shows Angus P. McDonald on there, half Okanagan, adopted into the Flathead tribe by the Kootenays. And I never knew that. But that's the way there was, and now there used to be a feller work for us by the name of Gravel, and he was from Whitefish country. Well, he went down there and tried to get enrolled, and he couldn't make it. He didn't have anybody to sponsor him or verify it. So after he's gone, and I suppose died, his half-brother wanted me to go down to the fathers and look up the records of them. And this Martin had two brothers. One was 4, I think one was 6, and one was 8. And Martin was 8. And they were brought down here and put at the father's school, and they were listed as Kootenays. If he'd have had that to show when they were enrolling him, he'd have been enrolled as a Kootenai. But he didn't have nothing like that. Of course, then there's others. I had a cousin that showed up here one time just before World War I. Fellow by the name of Joe Gerd. Never been around here much. Kind of a rounder. He said at one time he worked for circus outfits, driving these big circus wagons. Talked quite a bit of Mexican. He tried to get it enrolled, but he could never do it. But still, at the same time, he had as much blood as the rest of us.
Is everything okay? You were telling me earlier that about having a lot of camas and bitterroot just around your house to eat. And so I was wondering if you could tell me about that and about when you remember there no longer being a lot of camas and bitterroot around the house to eat.
We had dry meat, camas, and bitterroot in our house right up to about the time my mother got ill, and that's about 1930. She never had to do it. My folks always had lots and lots of Indian friends. And a lot of them made it a kind of a halfway place going back and forth. A lot of the old Indians up at Crow Creek had bring her camas, had bring her bitterroot, and sometimes they'd bring them chokecherries, sabbathberries, huckleberries, and she'd give them sugar, maybe flour. And once in a while, in the fall of the year, we had one old feller with, when the native whitefish was spawning in Crow Creek, why, he'd hook them. He didn't spear them, he'd use a hook. And he'd bring her a bunch of them. And every time my dad or granddad butchered, why, my mother and them always dried most of the meat. Sometimes they'd put a lot of it down, kind of dry salt or something. But it was mostly all dried. So we had dried meat all the time. And I can remember my mother, the flanks and the bellies of the dry meat, she'd cut it in long strips and dry it. Then lots of times she'd chop that up in chunks and boil it and make a kind of a soup and dumplings with it. I can always remember that. But us kids always run around with a few camas in our pocket and a bitterroot. Jay Swaney said he used to go up to Leon's school. He said the big chunk of dry meat in his hip pocket when he was in the first grade.
And that was up until the 30s.
Yeah. Yeah, we had it all the time there. My mother always had it.
I remember you saying that you didn't have a whole lot of dope on the Swan Valley killings, but that you had some dealings with it after they came back.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could tell me about that.
I can't tell you too much about it the deal that I got in it, oh, I'd hear a little now and then from people, but it'd go in one ear and out the other. But this old lady, Abraham, she was married to a man by the name of, Stewie was his Indian name, but on the roll they had him as Tusi, I think it's on the roll. Well, they had old Hanson from the university was putting on plays, and he was going to put a play on about that. So we got her, I was with the BIA then down at the office. So we got her there and her daughter, Mary Whispering Charlie, and John Peter Paul's mother. We got them down there, and Bap Pichette done interpreting. And they'd ask him questions about what happened here and what happened there. And seems like at the camp, this old Yalla Mountain, he wanted to go home. He says, we better leave here. He says, we might be in trouble. Oh, they decided they'd stay a little longer. And I think the camp was as near as I can tell. I never was there. But it seemed like it was right across the creek on the west side from where that road goes to Holland Lake.